All right, let's move on to the Bengals, Skinny. We'll start with the comments made by Joe Burrow following the Monday night win over the Dallas Cowboys. And obviously the news that everyone is talking about is what he had to say regarding T. Higgins. Quote, I'm confident we are going to be able to do what it takes to bring T back. I know that I am going to do what it takes to get him back so he can have those talks. Those are going to be off-season discussions. I think we are excited about that opportunity. That was news in and of itself. It struck me as notable that Joe Burrow went out of his way to make those comments at this time. And then it got even more interesting on Wednesday when more news came out that that Higgins has parted ways with NFL agent David Mulugeta, who has been very difficult for the Bengals to work with in recent years.
Yeah, so I did the post-game podcast, as you know, with Mike Petraglia, and I brought up that those rumors were circulating about him parting with Mulugeta, which then kind of led to me surmising this whole thing. So let's start with Joe's comments and what to take out of that.
Yeah.
For starters, don't think for a second, folks, he's taking any money of himself off the table. But what it does mean is he's probably willing to restructure to where a signing bonus is involved that takes some of the guarantees off the table that allows you to then prorate the signing bonus further down the road and spread out the money better. So I think I'm going to guess he's open to that. That's why if you're wondering if he has direct knowledge of this, or has talked to the front office, probably not him, but his agent. And I'm going to guess he went to his agent and said, hey, if we're going to get this done with T, ask them what we can do. I'm going to guess it has to involve the signing bonus. And then tying that into him dropping Mulugeta made it really, and again, at the point I was talking about this with Mike on Monday after the game, or actually early Tuesday morning after the game, we didn't know that for a fact. But again, that rumor was out there, and I brought it up that, boy, it sounds like they know that A, Joe knows he's willing to restructure his contract, and B, the fact that if Mulugeta is no longer the agent, then there's an open line of communication. And again, listen, you can hate David Mulugeta because he took Jesse Bates away from the Bengals. You can also blame the Bengals for letting Jesse Bates walk, all those things. But for whatever reason, he's very hard line. He gets his agents, he gets deals done for his clients. But I also think T is one of those guys that went, listen, man, there's got to be some wiggle room here. We got to be able to negotiate. I want to stay there. They want me to stay there. You know, you can't just be so rigid. And maybe it got to that point where the agent's like, no, man, just shut up and let me do the negotiating. And T was, no, I want to be with these guys. I don't need a hardline price. I need it to be close. And I want to get somebody else to represent me to try to do that. So I think Joe Burrow did not speak that off the cuff. Now, it was weirdly asked, because it was actually, I think Paul Dehner asked a question about Jamar Chase off the crazy night of, hey, that guy's got to get paid, right? I can't remember how Paul phrased the question. And then he went into T. Higgins diatribe, and you should have seen the look on those of us that cover the team. We all looked at each other like, wait, what? He's really doing this?
I mean, it was manna from the heavens for you beat writers trying to figure out what you're going to write about and talk about for the next 4 weeks as this team slogs through the rest of this meaningless season. And he just gives you an absolute gift like that to make that statement. And even if he's not restructuring any of his deal or giving away any money, just the fact that he's making that bold statement of, I'm confident we can get T back, which if nothing else says to me, he has said to the Bengals front office, I want that guy. I want him to stick around, do what you need to do to keep him. Maybe some of that's lip service. I don't know, but it says something to me that he went out of his way to do this. And then when you factor in the agent part of it, it really seems like there's a lot of smoke to this getting done potentially for the Bengals. And I also think, you know, Mulugeta has kind of like that Scott Boras reputation. For Scott Boras being the MLB agent who's known as kind of the hardline guy, gets his guys the biggest deals all the time. And I feel like when you're firing your agent, I'm sure there are other reasons to do so, but oftentimes it's because either you're not as good anymore and you need someone that can get you more opportunities because you're just not high enough priority for the current agent that you have, or you feel like your agent isn't negotiating on your behalf the way you want them to. And that's, I think, where everyone kind of leans with this T. Higgins situation coming up right now is the Bengals are trying to get something done with him. If he's open to that and David Mulugeta is just standing in the way constantly and not budging at all, maybe that's what led to this decision for him to look for a new agent. And if so, I mean, you'd have to feel really good about that if you're someone who wants T. Higgins back with the Bengals. The second part of that, Skinny, is should fans want T. Higgins back with the Bengals? We've talked about this a lot.
Yeah, at the right price. And I'm of that ilk of, I don't know what the right price is, but if it's the right price, it still allows you to address the other needs that you have, and you have a laundry list of them. Listen, I don't want this to become the Dan Marino Dolphins, where it was Dan Marino, Mark Clayton, and Mark Duper, and they put up a lot of points and yet they never really did anything and advanced very deep. They got to a Super Bowl once. Joe Burrow and T. Higgins and Jamar Chase have gotten to a Super Bowl to this point once. So I don't want this to be the, hey, great, I got Jamar and T and Joe, and okay, that's great, but the three of them can't play 3-on-11, and they can't go on play on defense too, and you need all those things. And those Dolphins teams, the Dan Fouts, Wes Chandler, Charlie Joyner, John Jefferson Chargers teams, they were a whole lot of fun. They put up a lot of points. They were great. Charlie Joyner's in the Hall of Fame. Dan Fouts is in the Hall of Fame. They were great. Never got to a Super Bowl. Never got to a Super Bowl. And I don't want it to turn out to that of, we got these fun little toys, but the rest of the roster stinks and you can't get to a Super Bowl. And so you have to gauge that too.
So I've been agreeing with that for most of this season, thinking they definitely don't want to bring both of them back. And heck, they may not even want to bring Jamar Chase back in some ways. But I wonder, the more I look at this season and the way it's gone and the way this defense has just turned into a complete disaster that looks like it has no pieces that you'd want to move forward with or need to move forward with. Do you trust this organization to be able to put together a defense, giving all the pieces that they need to figure out on that side of the ball? Or do you just say, hey, at least we got two guys that give us one hell of a chance already on offense. If we give them this third that's been pretty darn good, at least we know we have a starting point that makes us competitive. Maybe we'll get lucky through the draft or a free agent that we can we can cobble something together on defense, especially in a league that's dominated by the pass.
Yeah, and I will say that's a fair point. And so I will take it to the other degree of this, of let's just say you get this done. You'll have now then a window of at least 5 years probably to have all three of those guys still together, maybe even a sixth year potentially. If you can't get it done in a couple of off seasons in that 6-year window to address the defense, well, then shame on all y'all. I mean, that then literally does point to personnel decision making at that point. So, yeah, you're right. You have a foundation and a great starting point, and it was a different era because the money was not what it was, and free agency wasn't what it was. But I'm going to guess the Dolphins thought, got a hell of a starting point. We got Dan Marino and Mark Clayton and Mark Duper, and we'll figure out the offseason, and they never did. And so that's my only fear of, to your point, I don't know if I do trust. But I also know that, again, if you sign these guys to long-term deals, you've got a long window to get it right.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that would be what I'd feel better about, though. If you get all three of them into a window where you've got them, then you may never get the defensive thing right, but I feel better that you'll luck into having a usable defense, a defense that's competitive, than I do you'll be able to figure out both sides of the ball if they're mediocre. Because I mean, I think if you strip Joe Burrow of his weapons, we've seen this offense go downhill pretty quickly. We've seen the way they started this season, even looking really pedestrian, even with Joe Burrow back there at quarterback. So I don't know that I want to see both sides of the ball become mediocre to bad.
No, and that's a fair point. I fully understand that part of it. And, even as bad as the defense has been, they've had weird good moments, like the Baltimore game where the first 7 drives, all they got out of it was a field goal. And then all of a sudden they got torched on 4 straight possessions. So it does feel like it. This is going to sound so glass half full, and I feel like I'm a realist. But anyway, it does feel like you are close, but at the same time, it feels like you're far away because games against good teams, you just haven't gotten the job done. And at some point, those numbers add up of you're 1-6 against team or 0 and whatever against teams above 500 records. That speaks volumes to me, even though all those games are close.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I don't see how you see the defense being close. Right? I think this defense is as bad as it's ever been in the last 15 years. I mean, it's horrible.
But again, can you rectify that in 2 off seasons? I don't think you can rectify that in an off season. Can you rectify that in 2 off seasons?
Can some NFL franchises do that? Yes. Can the Bengals do it? I have zero faith in that happening other than them getting blindly lucky with young draft picks.
The one off season I will say they got right, and I think it was the same off season, might have been back-to-back, was the Chidobe Awuzie, Trey Hendrickson off season. I mean,
yes.
If Cheeto doesn't blow up his knee, he's still on this team and is a shutdown corner.
Yeah, I mean that was definitely bad luck for them, and that set them back. Their secondary has become a disaster, and that's part of the reason for it. But I don't know. It's funny. It's amazing how easy you're able to be swayed when you feel like getting T. Higgins is an option again. Because I was of the belief that it wasn't an option. I was like, okay, that's fine. They don't need him. I don't think that's what they should be doing anyways. But now all of a sudden, when it feels like a realistic possibility again, I'm like, well, maybe that is what they should be doing, quite honestly, because I'm really discouraged with what I've seen from them on the defensive side. And I don't have a lot of faith that they have a plan to fix that going forward. I don't know how you could fix it in one offseason.
Yeah, and maybe Mulugeta felt out the market, right? And the market told him, hey, your guy's not going to get what you think he's going to get because he's injury prone. When T's healthy, he's a very good player. I've never thought he's the number one wide receiver. I don't know if he goes anywhere, but he's a damn good 1A to 2 for sure. That part's not even in doubt when he's healthy. But maybe he felt out the market, and he's got a staunch price. And the market told him, not going to get it from anybody. And at that point, T's like, well, I'm not going to get it from anybody, and I'm going to get a decent, fair price here. I'd rather stay here.
Could be. I mean, it's interesting to see this played out because a lot of times you get all these fans speculating, you hear all these rumors, and then it plays out. It's not at all true. This is one of those times where the speculation and rumors seem to be right in line with the way this is playing out so far. So you have to think there's at least something to it.
And let me go back to end, wrap this up. When Joe Burrow says something like that, Joe Burrow isn't speaking off the cuff.
Yeah, agreed. Joe Burrow's house got broken into. He didn't want to speak about that much at all. I'll just say this, Skinny. They're thinking that this might be a sophisticated ring of criminals that are breaking into celebrities' houses, athletes' houses. They're targeting them. I would hope so, because I think personally, if I'm just like a run-of-the-mill guy from Anderson Township who decided to break into a house, I'm not going to choose the guy who has hundreds of millions of dollars, who is maniacally competitive and just told the world that he's purchasing a Batmobile.
Yeah.
That seems like a bad guy to go after. The guy who's into vigilante justice.
Yeah. My fear is this happens more often, and especially with high price celebrities. It was always interesting to me, and Kentucky fans always knew where John Calipari lived, right? And the vitriol at the end was really high. It surprised me that somebody didn't act goofy there, and I'm glad they didn't, nor should they. But it was very public of where he lived, right? And that seems odd to me. Like, I knew where Joe Burrow lived. I think a chunk of people did, because actually I have a friend of mine's mom, or his friend of mine's in-laws live very close to that house, and so most people who were in the know knew, and these people obviously knew. And I do think it is a sophisticated ring. Maybe we find out it's a bunch of jokers when they catch him, but for the security that he had, for them to be able to get through that and then find an escape route, probably through the woods. It sounds like they knew what they were doing.
Yeah, I guess I just don't really understand the targeting athletes thing. Is it just because they're out of town a lot? I mean, I would think they would have someone looking after their house, but
right. But they seem like they've been able to get through whatever security levels there are, and that tells me there is a level of sophistication there.
I think so, but I guess my point is there's some thought that athletes are being specifically targeted, and I just wonder, it's like, well, they're in these huge expensive neighborhoods. It seems like all of those houses would have expensive things in them and nice jewelry to steal. I wonder if, why would the athletes be the ones targeted unless someone just wants to go after them or something? I don't get that.
That could be it. But also, to your point, when Joe Burrow was out of town. I mean,
true. But you would think all of these guys would have people watching over their house while they're gone at this point.
Well, he had Olivia. I don't know which Olivia. He's got 1,000 Olivias. It was an Olivia.
He didn't seem too happy about that getting out there.
No, he did not.
Yeah, there's a young lady living with them who had been rumored to maybe be dating him. They were seen at the fashion show in Paris this year. So those rumors had been out there, and now she was the one who called in the break-in. She was living at the house. So he did not want to talk about that. He did not seem happy that was out there. But is that you think he doesn't want all the other girls on the road knowing that he's got a girlfriend back at home? Or is that just he's a private guy?
He's very private. I mean, he was engaged to an Olivia, not this Olivia. And they broke it off. Supposedly, we don't know for sure, but the assumption is that they broke it off back a few months ago. So since then, it seems like he's been a bachelor about town. And you know what? Good for him. Good for you, my guy. You do you.
I heard that they assembled a task force to look into this and some other high profile break-ins in the area.
I did not hear that, but that would make sense to me.
Why are we wasting our time with our communities, police officers, people that are paying taxpayers dollars? Just get the Bengals fans task force on this. Get some dudes from Twitter, those guys that are constantly tweeting at like the Ravens fans and the Steelers fans. Put them on the case. One, they'll be more efficient. And two, you won't have to waste any real officers' time or money because these guys will take care of it for you, no charge.
And civil liberties be damned, man. They'll get the answers, and you don't have to worry about civil liberties.
I mean, you saw what happened with this guy, the healthcare CEO getting shot. I mean, the internet finds these people in like a minute. Bengals fans, with the way they act online, there's no doubt that they would be able to find these guys, regardless of if they're in Colombia or wherever else doing this mess.
Exactly. That's a good call.
Sure, you could stop watching now, but let's be honest, you want to see more. So click some of those links, or better yet, go ahead and tap subscribe. That way you'll catch more content from Local 12.